4A, which focuses on, yes, introduces you to data sources, when to collect data, the unit you're supposed to collect data. So at the end of this module, you're supposed to be able to explain to others the different types of data sources, identify different sources of collecting data. You should be able to establish ways and when to collect your data, and also design units that you will collect such data for. Before I proceed, it's important to let you know that yes, data is synonymous to monitoring and evaluation, is the art of monitoring and evaluation. Um, and that's why we say that yes, monitoring and evaluation gives you an evidence-based approach to the change you might have made, if you have made one, or if the change you're contributing to. So in this video, I will be taking us through, yeah, measuring change in comparisons, data collection sources, data collection periods, and then we'll look at data collection unit, then wrap it up with a case study. Yeah, I mean, completing a learning task, because each of the module has its own task as well. So let's get into things. But before then, it is important for us to note that in order for us to say that, oh, our project or program is causing the change that we initiated the program for, there are two ways we do that, which is by comparing the before status of maybe those that are in your program. So before the program, during the program, then after the program, what has changed. So for example, if you have a community-based organization in a program that hopes to strengthen dialogue mechanisms between the community-based organizations and local government authorities on education or health budgets, for example, you would, to ascertain that you have actually strengthened these dialogue mechanisms, then it means that you need to collect data about the status of the community-based organizations that will be part of your program before you start the program. For example, if one activity is going to focus on workshops, right, about health budget, you need to be able to collect data before that workshop. Then after that workshop, you collect data again, just to be able to measure if there was a change at all, or if there aren't, or measure the extent of that change. Another way to do that is to compare those that receive intervention as compared to those that did not take part that did not receive your intervention. What that means is that, for example, a program that hopes to improve livelihoods of women that are sexually exploited, right, or returned irregular immigrants. What you'll do is try as much as possible to collect. Yes, I have a whole lot of irregular immigrants that you can put in your program, right? That you can put. So what you do is, so for example, if there's an activity that hopes to provide a business canvas, yeah, so like creating businesses for irregular or returned irregular migrants, right? In fact, there's a program like that currently going on, being implemented by the German Development Corporation. Um, so what that means is that yes, you can actually compare return irregular immigrants that are in your program, compare them to those that were not in your program, and try and find out what the difference would be like. So you can think about that. So these are ways you want to measure. And if we agree that yes, we need to collect data at the beginning and at the end, then it means that we need to think about our data collection at the beginning and at the end or at the middle of our program. So let's get into data itself, the kind of data that you will be using. It's either their primary data or their secondary kind of data. I'll get into things in a bit. Because the kind of data you use also is influenced by your data collection source, right? So when we mean data collection sources, it is the people that are in your programs, right? They are documents that you collect for your programs. So think about your program participants, your women groups, the men groups, the market women, the children living with disabilities, the sexually exploited women, um, the marginalized youth organizations. So these are all data collection sources in terms of human beings. Then you can now think about your meeting notes, your attendance register, your project reports. These are all examples of data collection sources. So you don't mix them up with data collection methods, which we will talk about them in module 4B and module 4C. So what's primary data? Primary data means that yes, your organization wants to focus on collecting data from the people that attended directly from people that attended your program. So, and that you will be the one to collect it yourself. So if women have attended, women groups, different kinds of women groups have attended your program, you decide to collect data directly from them. That's what we refer to as primary data. So yeah, I mean, it has its own strengths, it has its own weakness, and I think majorly in terms of primary data, its strength is that yes, the level of validity of it is quite high. And what do I mean by that? It means that yes, the quality of data that you get, you have control by it. You can make it have all the dimensions of data and of a data in terms of completeness, in terms of timeliness, in terms of reliability, in terms of integrity. You are the one in charge of collecting such data. But for example, if you are going the other way to use secondary data, which is data that was meant for other people, other things, and not for your program, you will not be sure of the validity of, which means, or reliability. You don't know how the situation, the environment they use in collecting such data. So that's majorly trying to look at the strengths and weakness of the tool. So examples of primary sources. Remember that we said primary sources are, yeah, those things that are involved, the people involved in your program, the documents that you use in your program. So you can have program participants, yeah, primary sources. Obtaining data from primary sources means yes, obtaining responses from program participants, beneficiaries, key informants, implementers, and a whole lot. And also looking at recordings of events and attending program meetings, and you observe behaviors and all. So, which we call ethnography, right? So that's primary sources, obtaining your data from primary sources. So what secondary data? Like I've explained before, they are data that is used, that has been provided, that is made available, but it was used for, the focus of it was for some other things, right? And not necessarily for your own program. So for instance, if your program hopes to, for example, increase access to justice for women across various legal systems. So, for example, let's say maybe at the magistrates, you're looking at, yes, women, how justice is being meted out to women at the magistrate level in a state. Um, Yes, you might just decide to look at maybe court proceedings that have been recorded by the magistrate court, maybe from January to December. Um, they have been already been recorded, and you just go there and want to analyze the content. So that's secondary data. But if your program was designed to track court cases, right? Follow court proceedings and make recordings your own. Then that's primary. But if you just need to check through reports at the courts, then that would be a secondary data. If you want to use the data from there, then that's secondary data. I've talked about the strength and weakness of it, but I mean, one strength is that yes, you won't be spending a whole lot of money, right? Um, so yeah, which is an advantage, right? But I've told us the other side of it. So what are examples of secondary sources of data? I've mentioned looking at newspaper articles, meeting records, attendance registers, which, yeah, I mean, you're familiar with all these meeting records. Um, yes, some of you have newspaper article clips about the work that you're doing, which means your donors want to look at it as a secondary data source. Also, your project reports as well. So think about all this as secondary sources of data. As we proceed, do not forget, if you have comments, something that resonates with the work that you do, questions, please put those comments in your class room comment box for this module, and we will be happy to respond to it. Please always do that. So when do you then collect your data? I think in the opening we have all agreed that for us to measure change, we have to compare the data we collected at the beginning of a program, at the middle, or at the end of it. So the data you collect before you start a program, which is very important, is called the baseline. And before you start any program, it's important that you collect that baseline. And baseline could just be that, oh, you already know the number of exploited women that will be in your program, right? All you need to do, maybe at the sensitization you would have for them, is to first prepare a questionnaire, collect their status, let us know their biography, let us know their perception, let us know their level of knowledge at the beginning of your sensitization. Then when you end the sensitization, so I mean, if it might not necessarily be, I mean, if you have like 10 sensitization workshops to do for them, then it's preferable for you to collect before the first one and by the end of the 10th sensitization, which would then mean the end line, right? That will be the end line. So what you have done, if you have collected at the beginning of the first sensitization, is baseline. If you are collecting at the end of the 10th sensitization, that is end line. Some people decide, oh, maybe at the middle, maybe at the fifth sensitization, they collect data as well. Ex post, when you say you're collecting data ex post, it means that yes, the program is already concluded, and at a particular point in time, you now come back to collect the data. If you remember so this is a type of evaluation, right? Ex post evaluation. If you remember that. So these are the periods at which you must plan, your organization must plan to be collecting data that are relevant to show that you are meeting your program or project objectives, anyone as the case may be. Um, so most times we talk about sampling. Okay, I mean, for example, you have 500 women in your group, and you want to think about, oh, okay, how many of them would I collect data from using my instrument, maybe a questionnaire, for example. There are different ways we do sampling in which you can collect data from your participants, project participants. Yeah, I mean, because most of you have participants, right? Either it's a community group where you go to mobilize them or so, or to train them, or to provide um, workshops for them. So it's important to think about, to know different ways in which you can conduct sampling. I mean, so many times we get this question of, oh, I have 100 people, must I talk to 100 of them? No, you do not need to. 70% of Nigerians are young people. Oh, we need to take a survey from all of them. No, you do not necessarily need to. All you need to do is take a sample. In order to be statistically correct, is to take a sample of that and 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 administer whatever instrument you have designed for them. And that leads us to talking about you sampling. So for we have different types of sampling. In fact, there are much more than this that we have outlined here, but I mean, this is just for your information and to think about being able to say that, oh, this was the kind of sampling that we used for this group of young people that were in our program. So you could use time sampling, so for example, um, you have provided a manual to sexually exploited women who are in your program that hopes to improve their livelihoods, right? If you've provided a business manual for them, you want to know at certain times if they are using it, or how they are using it as well. So you can think about just taking your participants in time. So maybe monthly, you go back and administer your instrument to them every month, maybe at the end of the month. You can think about it in that way. So that's what we refer to as time sampling. Um, you can get different numbers, maybe 10 at the end of the month, the end of the next month, you get 9. So, I mean, but you should be able to state that that was what you used. You could do simple random sampling. Imagine that all your program participants are only sexually exploited women who are almost of the same age range, right? So that this kind of sampling is what we call lottery, because we have people that their characteristics are almost the same. So you just roll out your questionnaire to them, and you hope that they will respond. So that's just a simple random sampling. You just because it is just some of them that will respond to your questionnaire. That's what we refer to as simple random sampling. In stratified random sampling, we talk about you trying to so if in your program, for example, a program where you have where the focus is on civil society organizations, right? For example, this training, right? Where civil society organizations will be coming from every part of the country, the 6 regions. We can just decide that, oh, and we want to do um, um, an evaluation, for example, or we just want to get feedback on our trainings. We can just decide that, oh, okay, let us just take three from each region, and that will be it. So that's let's speak with 3 representatives of civil society organizations in each region. So that we refer to as stratified random sampling. Snowball sampling, it is used when your program participants are hard to reach people. So, for example, maybe your program targets young people that have used Tylenol, that have used codeine before, for example, or those that were into drugs before, and you're trying to create a rehabilitation program or a therapy for them. So for you to get them, these are not easy people to come by, right? Because of stigmatization. So what it means is that you need to foresee one person that might have, yeah, gone through that process, been a drug addict before. Once you finish speaking with such people, you ask them, oh, please, do you know other people that are willing or that will be willing to speak to me about drug addiction, for example? So um, also, if your work is focused on, yes, empowering prison inmates, I mean, how do you collect your data at baseline to know their level of knowledge? Very difficult. So, but I mean, you want to say you partner with NAPTIP, um, or or what? So even at that, it means that you need to let them know first, and before they can present to you a whole bunch, you need to be speaking with one another. So that's how snowball sampling really works. Then convenience sampling. This type of sampling is majorly what journalists do use. So it is, if you have been just maybe while you're walking on the walkway and you have a journalist put a microphone in your mouth, like, oh, what do you think about XYZ? That is convenience sampling. So what it means is that your participants, you just want to pick them, and not necessarily like at a rally, for example, where you have a rally of a whole lot of people that came for your rally, you just pick one, two, three people. That is what we refer to as convenience sampling, without you thinking about their characteristics, right? So we refer to that as convenience sampling. And I mean, there's still other types of sampling, but this is one that can be useful for you. It's just important that you're able to say that, oh, this is the type of sampling that I used. Also, another thing that we normally face is that, for example, if you have 100 people, so if you're using simple random sampling, for example, and you have 100 people with the same characteristics, right? How do you know the number that you need that needs to answer your questionnaire for it to be statistically correct? And when I say statistically correct, I'm saying that for it to be reliable, for it to be valid, right? Like you have 100 people and maybe only 10 responded to your questionnaire out of 100 people that participated in your event. You should know that, oh, that might not necessarily be a representative, right? Especially if you're using simple random sampling or stratified random sampling or time sampling, all right? Because these are actually what we refer to as probability sampling. There are types of probability sampling. So let's get to that. Like, how many do you need in your program? And what we've done is turned to a table that was created by Critzy and Morgan in 1970. Very statistically relevant way for you to know the people that you at least need to answer your questionnaire, especially if you are using a quantitative methodology, like administering um, survey, whose instrument will be a questionnaire, right? So if 10 people were in your program, for example, 10 people attended your sensitization program, your workshops, your rallies, attending your study centers. So you need those 10 people to respond for it to be statistically correct. Um, or you need 19 people, right? 19 people. I think this should be 20 if I'm correct. I will still try and find out because that's a I can see that that's a repetition, right? So this should be okay. So this is 20. This is 20. You need 19 to respond to your survey. If you have 40 people in your program, you need 36. If you have 50, you need 44 to respond to your questionnaire. So you can think about it all. Or if you have 600, you just need 234. If you have 1,000, you only need 278. So this means that as the numbers in your program increases, you just need few people. You just need few people um, for you to administer a questionnaire or to respond to your questionnaire. Because if 1,000 are in your program, you need to administer it to 1,000. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it is those 1,000 that will respond to your questionnaire. So it's important for you to note that, and that is what we refer to as those that will respond will be your sample size, right? So think about that very well, especially when you're saying, "Oh, my project had oh, the knowledge has changed." You need to also factor in, "Oh, how many people responded to your questionnaire?" On that note, we will go to our learning task for us to complete. Um, so this learning task would allow us to complete a data collection plan. It is important to have a data collection plan, especially when you have agreed on your indicators. Remember, week one ended at us identifying our indicators. So the next thing is to, yes, develop a complete data collection plan, which we will be doing um, now. So think learning task one of this module focuses on, so let's go to the class. This is week 2 and for a learning task, right? Let's do this and view the assignment that we have. Boom, 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 boom. So this is the assignment that we have. Complete a data collection plan using the templates attached. So this template is already attached for you. You can go ahead and impute inside the templates. Again, you can go ahead and impute inside the template. Yes. So this is, I will show us in a bit how the template looks like. So this is a completed one anyways. So but what you will see is an empty version of it. I'm only using this for the training purpose. Remember, this was where we ended in week 1 at this point, indicator. So, and I mean, we had like 2 different projects that we did an example of. So I need to do something at this moment. So your template actually is like this. This is how it is, and I will show us from this training. Let me rename this to livelihood. I'm going to work on one now before we lose our time. This is anti-corruption, right? Participatory budgeting, something like that. Let me just call it participatory budgeting. Good. Can you have livelihoods? So let's get into things. This week will now start from here. From data source, data collection method, who will collect data, when will data be collected, right? This is interesting because so in week 3 you will see how this now forms an M&E framework or M&E plan, which is the main goal, which is the kind of system we're talking about that you should have for all your programs. One thing I will also do, let's wrap things up so that we can enjoy the way the table looks like. This we wrap it. Good. So you have something like this. Don't forget we already have our indicators at this stage, blah blah blah. We're just going to continue. In the template you will still see all this blank. Just copy what you have in week 1 by module 3 and paste inside here, then continue with data source, data collection method, and you know we already responded to your submissions, so use that to even change whatever you have, some of your indicators that we've said, oh, you should review or revise and all that. So let's get into the first column, which is data source. So what are the data sources for each of what we have here? So and you look at this based on your indicators. Very, very important. Let us also, can we do that? I think, no. I wanted to see if I will freeze so that we don't keep, but since, so let me just delete rows 3 to 4 and so let's quickly get into things depending on number of meetings. How do you know the number of meetings, right? You can say meeting nodes. Just think about it. Like if you have ended your program, the activity, how would you know? Number of meetings, for example. It could also be attendance register, but you know that meetings with legislative committees, meeting notes. So it means somebody needs to take the meeting notes. Number of advocacy meetings in lieu of advocacy meetings to NATIP, right? This can also be the same thing, right? Could be meeting notes as well. Number of school clubs that the program would have. You can talk about project reports or MOU signed with those schools. Think about that as well. Road sensitization, number of road sensitization could be project reports and maybe pictures. I mean, think about that, maybe pictures. So it means you're saying, don't forget, this thing will still end up, this is a plan, right? Which means, oh, you must take pictures, right? When you're doing this, that's what it means. Dangers of irregular migration toolkit for the women in your group. So number of toolkits. How do you know that, right? Could be project reports or purchase orders since you print it anyways. So something like that. Average hours of trainings, also maybe time stamp or facilitation guide will show you for each of the training the hours, average hours that you use in training young women. So we go up. Ratio of exploited women to other women in your, who said they now understand dangers of, so it means that yes, there's an instrument you need to know who said that, right? So what would then be your source of getting that? Don't forget the source of getting this information. We already said it, exploited women, ratio of, so that means there are women in your program, right? So I'll just say program participants, or women, just if it's only women, women participants, then change in knowledge of exploited women on sexual abuse. This is almost the same thing. Women participants, average number of girls attending school clubs that response they can now start business, right? Um, so think about the school club participants, your school club members, right? Then quote from legislatures during advocacy meetings, right? When you meet, uh, so I mean, in being able to meet this objective, right, that they acknowledge. So we might just say project reports or meeting notes. Yes, advocacy meeting notes, whichever one. So don't forget you'll be doing, this is what you'll be doing for this task. Reduce trafficking, perception of stakeholders on rate of trafficking of women. We can say, oh, key informants. We need key informants for that. Changing the number of women in your program that started business. Oh, okay. So this is like when they were in your program. So like a change from when they entered your program to when your program ended. So women beneficiaries or participants, whichever one, think about that. Then the existence of the VAP Act, which is Violence Against People Prohibition Act. So just an example, this was just an example anyways, in order for the laws to create laws to protect women. Where can you find that? So we can say Lagos State Gazette because this project actually looks at Lagos, right? So these are all data sources. We're not going to go to the impact, but you can also say you want to go to impact level and think about, yes, maybe if there's a gender equality index, maybe you can get this there. Then data, oh, okay. Change in quality index, right? So you can say gender equality report. If there's a national report that is like this, good. But I mean, we're not making reference to this because it's a long-term change which our program might not necessarily contribute to. So the next column is to look at data collection method. So data collection method, we've already looked at this meeting notes. What are the methods for now looking for this? We normally call this document or content analysis. That's the method analysis. Most of what you get here is actually document analysis, right? So I'll just come here and that's the method. And just do this and draw this down. Or just leave it as one, right? So I already know that all of them, so whichever way you want to do it. So ratio of women exploited, blah, blah, blah. So women participants, all this, the way you would, the method has already said itself while we were discussing, oh, changing knowledge of by women participants. So it means that you need to administer a survey, right? Same thing with this, administer a survey, administer, right? So, quote from yes, so project reports and all this would definitely be document analysis. Then we go up the ladder, key informants, perception. So you can start to see that um, where you have this, you have where you have ratios, average number, those are numerical indicators, right? And what it means is that you will be using quantitative methodology, which is administering questionnaire, for example, which we will deal with in the next module, the module 4B. Um, but for codes, they are qualitative methodologies. So perception here means um, interview. So you can think about maybe semi-structured interview, whichever way, or narrative, if they are experts, just to get their perception, right? So we say narrative interviews. Then also this could be to administer a survey and document analysis here as well. So with this, you would have completed. Let's see what's next. Also at this impact is just for you to check the gender equality and analyze it. Then think about who will collect the data. Very, very important. Remember, this is a plan even before you're going to start your program. So put the exact name of the person. So here, but we'll just be using something. So not necessarily. So you can, in your own, because it's your organization program, start to think about who will collect the data meant for this. Most civil society organization will use the program manager to collect, to make sure that yes, we administer a survey for women beneficiaries, or we administer survey to school club members, right? So let there be somebody assigned to that. Might be same person for these two. It's possible. Um, so let's go to the next column, which is when will data be collected? Yes, so you need to think about this very, very well, depending on the activity that you're carrying out. So meetings, oh, okay, maybe at the end of meetings, right? At the end of meetings, this staff will be collecting meeting notes, right? Oh, so think about it in that way. That's what it means. Let me go up to administer survey. So this is for participant, and you already have change. Most of this would be at the baseline and at the end line. Yes. So you could say before program commences and when program ends. Average numbers. All right. So and when program ends. Change, for you to measure change, it will be the same thing as well, right? So I'll put it in that format. So think about all this. Yeah, you could think about document analysis for quotes from legislature, might be during program delivery, right? These two might be the same thing, ratio of exploited women to, or you say maybe at the end, but I mean, so um, then you can go up again and think about, oh, changing the number, okay, before program commences and at the end. Um, it might be the same instruments that you will use. So questionnaire, same questionnaire, no, this is for school club. This is for women participants. It means this is same on the same questionnaire. We're going to do this in module 4B, yeah, to create a questionnaire. So it means the same thing, right? Um, let's go up and see. We only have one narrative interview. And yes, I mean, narrative interviews, okay, you can do this at the end of the program. So this is you completing, we have completed the data collection plan. Don't forget, in some places you might see um, some other adjoined things. So for example, you can actually see data collection instruments. So once you see this, you have questionnaire. You can see it here. Let me just insert one left. So this is just for the purpose of this. So instrument. So also you know the difference between instrument and method. When you say administer a survey, the instrument is, you need to think about it. So is it an online? I mean, we are in the world of online now. So will it be an online questionnaire or not? Interviews face to face, or is it an online interview? Face to face. No. So this will not be good one. You could say face to face narrative interviews here if you want, but the instrument would be maybe a question guide. In narrative interviews, you don't have a guide. In semi-structured, narrative interviews means you just want to listen to the expert to talk. Semi-structured interview, if it were here, then you need a question guide because, yeah, I mean, it's a mix of structured and unstructured. So, which we will do in module 4C anyways. So, but you have questionnaire. Yeah, I mean, questionnaires are easy to use and they're very common also as well. So that will be it on that one. So I mean, when you're done, is just for you to turn it in. Um, when you're done with it on your sheet, just turn it in. Don't forget, we want your comments on yes, what worked, how did you participate, how did your team participate, what struck you. Please put them in the comment box while you're even submitting um, your task as well. Will be very, very super useful for us. And don't forget, if you have comments, suggestions, please feel free to put it also inside um, the classroom comments box as well. Um, that would be the end of this module 4A, which focuses on data collection, introduction. In module 4B, we will be looking at quantitative data collection method. And yeah, we will design a survey and administer it in that. And we also have module 4C in this week 2 as well, where you would look at qualitative data collection method. And also the last part of the week is planning data analysis. I hope this has been useful for you. Please keep your comments coming. I wish you guys all the best and keep doing the good work. that you're doing. Let me say bye for now.